My name is Lyora Vale, 29 years old. The mahogany walls of Harrison and Associates had that museum sheen, the kind that reflects everyone in oil gloss fragments, like we were already artifacts of a life gone wrong. I sat in a leather chair that whined whenever I breathed too hard and clutched my late husband's wedding band in my fist until the edges bit my palm. 3 weeks since the accident. 3 weeks since condolences curdled into logistics. And now here we were, gathered like polite vultures around a conference table that smelled faintly of lemon oil and old secrets. Melissa was opposite me, her fingers drumming a practiced rhythm on the table in a dress that wasn't mourning attire so much as a performance of power. A pearl necklace I recognized from Marcus's grandmother, supposedly at the jeweler's for cleaning, rested on her collarbone like an inside joke. Every time our eyes met, she offered a feline smile, the kind you can feel in the back of your neck. On my right, Patricia sat sculpture still, hair swept into an immaculate chignon, wedding ring catching the light at precise, punishing angles. She hadn't looked at me since I entered. Richard, head of the table, head of the family, head of everything, watched Mr. Harrison like he had already read the script and didn't care for improvisations. "Shall we begin?" Mr. Harrison asked, voice smoothed by decades of telling the living what the dead had decided. Liver-spotted hands, wire-rimmed glasses, papers aligned with a surgeon's neatness. The last will and testament of Marcus Jonathan Whitmore, executed and notarized 6 months prior to his death. 6 months. My throat pinched. 6 months ago, we were arguing over whether to watch the Santorini sunset from Oia or Fira. 6 months ago, he'd kissed me in our kitchen and said there were places he'd never let me go. Not safe, you promise me, Leora. I'd laughed and taken it as overprotective love. To my beloved Melissa Crawford, Harrison read, and the word beloved landed like a slap. I bequeath the estate at 47 Rosewood Drive, including all furnishings and contents, the investment portfolio at Goldman Sachs, current value approximately $3.2 million, the Mercedes-Benz S-Class, the BMW X5, and the vacation property in Aspen. The room tilted. Aspen, that was where we'd lit a fire Christmas Eve and talked about adopting a dog. The Mercedes, my birthday car, the one he teased me about driving like a grandma. Furniture I had chosen, down to the ridiculous throw pillows he'd claimed to hate, and then used every night. "This is insane," I heard myself say, as if from the far end of the glossy table. "We were married. California is a community property state. He can't just—" "Everything of consequence was in his name, purchased before your marriage, or with inherited funds," Richard said, not unkindly, just efficiently cruel. "Separate property, dear. The law is the law." Melissa's smile sharpened. Patricia's mouth didn't move. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat, the way people do before they hand over the final shard of glass. To his wife, Leora Vale, he leaves the property at 1847 Old Mill Road, known locally as the Fisher Shack. A small key scratched over wood as he slid it toward me. It was old, tagged with a leather scrap, inked by a hand that didn't think I'd ever see it. The Shack. Every horror story in town started with that place. Parents used it to scare children straight. Teenagers dared each other to last a night inside. A punchline, not an inheritance. "That fits," Melissa stage whispered, cheap and pathetic. Laughter skittered around the table like mice. Even Patricia's eyes softened a fraction. And that hurt more than the laughter. Richard watched the key with a look I couldn't name. Satisfaction? Relief? As if a problem had been solved with elegant economy. I stood so fast my chair rolled back into the wall. "There has to be a mistake. Marcus loved me. He wouldn't—" "Sit down, Leora," Richard said, the warning under the words velvet sheathed. "You're making a scene." I wanted to flip the table, scatter their sleek pens and tidy folders, ask Melissa how the pearl necklace felt pressed against a throat that had learned my husband's whispers. I wanted to tell Patricia that grief should not look like victory and ask Richard how long he'd rehearsed that line about the law. Instead, I stayed standing, because anger was the only thing keeping me upright. "Be grateful," Richard added. "He left you something." That unlocked something darker than anger. Grateful for rot. Grateful for humiliation. Grateful for a key that smelled like rust and old rain. I picked it up. It was colder than it should have been, as if it had waited for me in a place without sunlight. "I'll contest," I said, looking at Mr. Harrison, not because I believed I'd win, but because I needed them to hear that I wasn't done. "You're right," he said softly. The will was properly executed. Grounds will be limited. Have fun in your shack, Melissa cooed as I turned away. I hear it's lovely this time of year. I did not give her the satisfaction of seeing me cry. In the parking lot, I pressed the wedding band into my palm until it left a perfect circle in my skin. The sky had begun to bruise purple at the edges, that cusp hour where things look truer and more dangerous. I should have driven to my sister Elena's house. Tea, a blanket, a room where grief could drop without breaking everything it touched. But the key pulsed in my pocket like a heartbeat. There are places I'll never let you go, not safe. It had been a joke line then. Something in the cadence of memory made it sound like a warning now. I told myself I only wanted to look, to prove it was what they meant it to be. A piece of rot, a last insult, nothing more. The town thinned quickly past the curated boutiques and freshly painted murals that the Whitmores liked to fund for ribbon cuttings. Streetlights went sporadic and then vanished. The GPS pinwheeled. Trees leaned in with a kind of hunger. Old Mill Road was narrower than I remembered, and longer too, the kind of road that requires you to negotiate with your own breath. When I saw the number nailed into a split post, 1847, I recognized it from ghost stories and from the brittle way Marcus had said, "Promise me." I pulled onto the gravel shoulder and left the engine running. The shack crouched like something feral that had learned the shape of a house, roof sagging, windows boarded in a patchwork that looked more like ritual than repair, vines stitching one whole wall into nature's mouth. My headlights washed over a doorway that leaned the wrong way. I could have left then. Could have put the key in my pocket, driven to Elena's, and told myself tomorrow, with contractors and daylight and a proper mask against mold, I'll do this. I was not foolish. I was not brave. I was humiliated. And humiliation is a blade that wants a target. The key stuck, then turned with a grinding sound that made my molars ache. The hinges screamed. Air pushed out at me, damp, sour, with a metallic edge like pennies sucked too long between your teeth. Dust rose at the tremor of my footsteps, making galaxies in the beam of my phone's flashlight. The front room was larger than I expected and closer too, claustrophobic in a way that had nothing to do with size. Furniture hunched under gray sheets. Along the walls, the wood had been carved, not scratched. Initials, dates, angles that made symbols my brain wanted to read and could not. A fireplace gaped dark and stuffed with paper, pages crumbling to brown lace at my touch. Transfer complete, liability assumed, in the event of discovery. I told myself this was kids, urban explorers with a flair for drama. I told myself that when my light slid over a photograph propped in a cracked mirror frame and I saw Marcus, young, sharper around the eyes, raising a glass with 3 men in immaculate suits outside this very shack. The date on the back, Phase 1 complete, 2014. A year before he accidentally met me at the fundraiser where we danced to a band he pretended to hate. A sound came from beneath the floor. 3 knocks. A pause. 3 more. The rational part of me said settling or animals. The part of me that had sat across from Melissa's pearls thought human, deliberate, counting. "Hello?" I whispered, because whispering in a place like that feels safer than a voice that might call something by its name. Silence stretched. Then, tap, 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 from a different spot, as if whatever was below had moved with me. My phone trembled in my hand. My mouth tasted like fear and old pennies. I should have left. Instead, a new thing appeared where there had been nothing. A leather notebook on a dust-thick table, my name stamped into the cover in fading gold. Leora. My heartbeat climbed into my throat. The first page held Marcus's handwriting. I knew it better than my own, how his P looped, how his T never quite committed to a cross. Subject acquired. Surveillance begins tomorrow. R. Insists she's perfect for the role. No family money. Limited connections. Ambitious enough to be grateful. Phase 2 estimated within 18 months. I closed my eyes and saw the law office again. The neat violence of testament. The way Richard had stared at the key like it ended a problem. I opened them on the gutted room where dust motes floated like the small souls of secrets, and knew that the shack was not a joke. It was a door. I did not run. I backed out, because leaving a thing like that deserved care, and when the night air hit my face, it felt like surfacing from a long dive. The engine turned over on the first try. I put the notebook on the passenger seat and drove away with my hands 10 and 2, like a teenager trying to pass a test, the rusty key cold against my thigh through my jeans. At the end of the road, where signal returned and civilization pretended to begin again, my phone lit with a text from an unknown number. 4 words. We need to talk. I should have gone home. I turned the car toward Old Mill Road instead. The text glowed on my screen like it was alive. We need to talk. No name, no number I recognized. Just 4 words, heavier than the key in my pocket, heavier than the notebook now sitting on my passenger seat like a silent passenger of its own. I pulled over at a gas station, fluorescent lights humming, bugs suiciding against the bulbs, the kind of place where no one looks too closely at anything. My hand shook as I unlocked the phone again. The message was still there, waiting, patient. I typed back before I could think better of it. Who are you? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then nothing. The emptiness of that response was worse than silence. I shoved the phone face down, bought a bottle of water I didn't drink, and stared at my reflection in the convenience store window. Hair pulled back hastily, eyes too wide, skin ashen under the buzzing light. I looked like someone caught in the wrong story. When I got to Elena's house, it was past midnight. She opened the door in pajamas, hair piled in a messy bun, irritation dissolving the instant she saw my face. Lyora, what happened? I wanted to collapse into her, let her carry the weight, but words came out clipped. I went to the shack. Her mouth opened, closed. At night? Alone? Are you insane? Probably, I said, pushing past her into the warm, cluttered comfort of her living room. Books stacked like barricades, a throw blanket over the couch, the faint smell of chamomile tea clinging to the air. All the things I had wanted earlier and denied myself. I placed the notebook on the coffee table. She reached for it like it might bite. What is this? Marcus's handwriting, records, about me, about... I faltered, the words tasting like betrayal even now, about how I was chosen. She flipped a few pages, her eyes scanning quickly, her hand going to her mouth. Subject acquired. Surveillance logs. Oh my God. The weight of it sank into the room. The idea that my marriage, my love, my entire adult life had been constructed like a science experiment. That Marcus had been given instructions, like I was a role to be played rather than a person to be loved. Elena whispered, So you were, what, a project? A pawn? I didn't answer, because the answer was yes and no, and both made me sick. Her boyfriend Tom came out of the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. He was still in his work shirt, grease stains on the sleeve. He looked at the notebook, then at my face. What's going on? Her husband kept files, Elena said, voice unsteady, like case files, on her. Tom sat down heavily. Jesus, that's not just betrayal, that's organized, systematic. Who else knew about this? The 3 of us stared at the notebook like it might answer. I picked up the key and set it beside the notebook. The 2 together looked obscene. A map and a compass, both pointing me toward places I didn't want to go, but couldn't ignore. Elena shook her head. We have to burn this, pretend it never existed. Lyora, this is dangerous. I can't, my voice came out too sharp. I need to know why. Why me? Why him? Why any of it? Tom leaned forward. Then you're not going back there alone. I'll come. Tomorrow, in daylight, with tools. And me, Elena said quickly, though her hands trembled. I'm not letting you face this by yourself. For the first time since the will reading, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not relief, not safety, but less alone. We tried to sleep that night, but I lay awake on Elena's couch, staring at the ceiling. Every creak of the house was a knock beneath the shack floorboards. Every car passing outside was headlights through broken windows. My phone buzzed once at 3 a.m. I grabbed it, heart thundering. Another message, same number, don't trust Richard. I whispered the words aloud, and in the quiet of the dark, they sounded like prophecy. By morning, I was almost grateful for the distraction of action. Tom packed flashlights, gloves, a crowbar. Elena insisted on bringing her camera, muttering about documenting everything. I didn't argue. Evidence felt safer than memory now. The shack in daylight was uglier, not gentler. Its wounds were more obvious. The roof caved in places, siding eaten by rot, boards warped. The air smelled of mildew and old wood baking in the sun. Tom tested the porch before we stepped onto it. This place is a lawsuit waiting to happen. Or something worse, Elena murmured, snapping pictures. Inside, the dust was gold in the sunlight. The carvings on the walls looked deeper, more deliberate. I traced one with my finger. 1987. Initials scrawled beside the words, "The deal is done." "What deal?" I whispered. "Look at this." Tom was crouched near the fireplace. He'd pulled away more of the decayed papers. Beneath them, a floorboard looked newer, less warped. He pried it up with the crowbar. A hollow cavity yawned below, a ladder descending into darkness. "No," Elena said immediately. "Absolutely not. That is every horror movie ever." But Tom had already tested the rungs. "It's solid, newer construction. Somebody wanted this hidden." I swallowed hard. The notebook in my bag felt heavier. Phase 2 estimated within 18 months. Marcus's handwriting. "I'm going," I said. Elena cursed under her breath, but followed. The cellar smelled of cold stone and something electric, like old wiring. Concrete walls, cement floor, shelves lined with boxes labeled in block letters. On a workbench, cameras, recording devices, a phone tapping kit that looked like it belonged in a spy movie. Elena whispered, "What the hell was Marcus involved in?" I didn't answer, because my eyes had landed on a box with my maiden name written on the side. Inside, reports, transcripts, medical files, photographs of me at 17, 18, 19. Notes in Marcus's hand. Subject shows signs of father abandonment issues, likely to respond to older male protective figures. I gagged, dropped the file. My life dissected like a lab experiment. Tom's voice came from the other side of the cellar, tight. "You need to see this." He held up another box. Bundles of cash, old bills stacked in neat rolls, some with serial numbers in sequence, like they'd come straight from a bank vault decades ago. "This isn't just surveillance," Tom said. "This is laundering, organized crime levels." Elena raised her camera, snapping photo after photo. "We have to go to the police." "No." The word tore out of me before I could stop it. "Not yet. Not until I understand." That was when the footsteps came, above us, slow, heavy, dust trickling down with each step. We froze. The ladder was the only way out. Then a voice drifted down. Calm, conversational, familiar. "I know you're down there, Leora. We need to talk." "Richard." Elena's eyes went wide. Tom clenched the crowbar like a weapon. My own heart stuttered, but I knew one thing with absolute clarity. Whatever Richard wanted to talk about, it wasn't going to save us. And he already knew too much. Richard's voice was almost pleasant, as if he were inviting us to brunch instead of standing above our heads in a shack that smelled of rot and secrets. "The police won't help you, dear," he continued, his tone carrying that rich man certainty that laws are just another currency. "Half of them are on our payroll, have been since Fisher's time." Elena's grip tightened on her camera. Tom whispered, "He knows we're here. He probably knew before we came." My pulse thundered in my ears. I glanced at the shelves, the boxes, the equipment. Evidence. Proof. But also a trap. Richard's voice confirmed what my gut already screamed. I had stepped into something engineered long before I ever set foot in the shack. "You can come up," Richard called, "and we'll discuss this like civilized people. Or I can come down. But either way, there's only one ladder, and I don't like conversations in cellars." Tom mouthed, "What do we do?" His knuckles whitened around the crowbar. Elena shook her head furiously, mouthing, "Don't go." But Richard's words had a pull. He sounded so confident, so certain that he owned the air we breathed. I raised my voice, surprising myself with the steadiness. "Why me? Why this place? Why did Marcus—" My throat closed, the betrayal still too raw. Why did he have to die? A pause above us, heavy enough to feel like weight pressing on the ceiling. Then Richard's footsteps shifted, deliberate, positioning directly over the ladder. "Come up, Leora," he said. "I'll tell you everything." Tom leaned close, whispering hot against my ear. "He won't kill you. You're too important, whatever this is. But us? We're expendable." That cut through me. I couldn't let them be collateral. I placed a trembling hand over Tom's, lowering the crowbar. "We go up together," I whispered. Elena's eyes blazed, but she nodded, tucking the camera strap tighter around her wrist. We climbed. The ladder groaned under our weight, each rung echoing like a countdown. When my head cleared the floor, sunlight hit me like a slap after the cold cellar air. Richard stood not 10 feet away, immaculate in a dark suit despite the shack's ruin, as if decay bent to his will. Behind him, 3 men in tailored suits, their bodies built not for offices but for intimidation. Richard didn't even glance at Tom or Elena, his eyes fixed on me, sharp and pale as cut glass. "You weren't supposed to see this," he said simply. I swallowed. "Then why leave it where I could?" His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Marcus's weakness. He thought he could play both sides. Thought love, he said the word with distaste, like it was a disease, was stronger than duty. The ground tilted under me. You killed him. Richard's gaze didn't flinch. Marcus made his choice. He chose you over us, and that was unacceptable. Elena gasped. Tom shifted closer, crowbar at his side like a secret threat. My chest ached so sharply I thought I might collapse. Why me? I forced the words out. Why my life, my family, my marriage? Richard tilted his head, studying me, the way a scientist might study a lab rat. Because you're a Fisher. Joseph Fisher was your great-uncle. My associates and I ensured he exited when he became inconvenient. His fortune, his properties, they all should have been ours uncontested. Then we discovered you, a loose end, blood we couldn't erase. The air in the shack turned thin, hard to breathe. So Marcus married me, to control me. To contain you, Richard corrected smoothly. To ensure you never realized who you were or what you inherited. He stepped closer, hands clasped behind his back like he was giving a lecture. Marcus was supposed to get you pregnant. Bloodline secured under our guidance, but he faltered, grew sentimental. Something inside me broke. You murdered your own son. Richard's expression didn't change. The syndicate comes first, always has. The word hung in the room, syndicate. Not family, not business, an empire of shadow. I forced myself to stand taller, even as my body wanted to collapse into grief. You won't silence me. Not now. Richard's pale eyes glinted with something between amusement and menace. You already are silenced, Leora. Every document you touch downstairs. Your fingerprints are all over them. Your friends' fingerprints, too. If this ever comes to light, it won't be me they call complicit. It will be you. Elena's voice shook. You set her up. Richard finally looked at her, like noticing an insect for the first time. She's already implicated herself. You helped her. Congratulations. Tom stepped forward, crowbar half raised. If you lay a hand on her... Tom, I whispered sharply, but Richard only chuckled, shaking his head. You see, loyalty. Dangerous thing when misapplied. He turned back to me, voice soft now, intimate. Go home. Forget the shack. Forget the files. And maybe you'll live long enough to grow old. Keep digging, and you won't see your next birthday. The men in suits opened the shack's door, daylight glaring behind them like an exit wound. Richard gave a small nod. Clean up this mess, he told them. Burn what's useless. Leave nothing that matters. Then he walked out, his polished shoes clicking on the warped porch boards, his figure too composed for a man who had just confessed to orchestrating lives like chess pieces. We stood frozen in the gutted shack, the air thick with dust and threat. Tom's jaw worked furiously, his grip white on the crowbar. Elena clutched her camera like a lifeline, eyes wide and wet. And me? I pressed the notebook against my chest, feeling its weight like destiny and doom all at once. Richard thought I was trapped, thought I was already silenced. But if Marcus had died trying to tell me the truth, then I owed him this, to finish what he started, even if it killed me. The three men in suits lingered as Richard's footsteps receded. They didn't move toward us right away. One lit a cigarette, exhaled lazily, and ground the ash into the warped floorboards as if to mark the shack as theirs. The other two stood by the door, eyes scanning, expressions unreadable. Tom shifted, crowbar tight in his hands, but I caught his wrist. Not now, I whispered. We were outnumbered, and Richard's threat still hung in the air like smoke. The tallest of the men finally spoke. You heard him. Leave the shack. Forget what you saw. It'll be safer. Safer. The word felt like a joke in his mouth. Still, the way he said it, soft, almost regretful, made me wonder if even monsters had doubts. We left without resistance. My hand tightened around the notebook hidden under my jacket. Outside, Richard's sleek car was already gone, gravel dust swirling in its wake. The shack stood behind us, boards groaning as if exhaling secrets we'd disturbed. Back in Tom's truck, silence pressed down heavy. Elena finally broke it. We can't go to the local police. He was right about that much. So what then? Tom asked, eyes flicking to me in the rear view. What's our next move? I opened the notebook, flipping to the most recent entries. My eyes caught on a page marked with Marcus's handwriting only weeks before his death. Ledger secured. Subject remains unaware. Richard suspects hesitation. Must accelerate timeline. I traced the words with trembling fingers. Ledger. It had to be somewhere in the shack, or beneath it. And if Richard hadn't destroyed it yet, then maybe... "We need to find the ledger," I said. Tom groaned. "You want to go back in there? After what just happened?" "Yes," I said firmly, "because whatever Richard is hiding, it's bigger than me. Bigger than Marcus. That ledger could expose everything." Elena leaned forward from the back seat, her face pale but resolute. "Then we'll get it. But not alone, Leora. Not like last night." Her certainty steadied me. For the first time since the will reading, I didn't feel like I was drowning alone. We drove straight to Elena's house, curtains drawn, doors locked, coffee brewed like it was armor. Tom laid the crowbar on the table between us. Elena set her camera down, already checking the memory card. "We need allies," she said. "Someone outside Richard's reach. Someone who can publish this if we don't make it out." The name rose in my mind immediately. Jenny Martinez, investigative journalist, tenacious, unafraid of lawsuits or threats. She'd been chasing corruption stories for years, though her pieces often disappeared from local papers after editorial review. "Jenny," I said aloud, "she's the only one who will believe us." Tom frowned. "And if she's on their payroll too?" "Then we're already dead," I said simply. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to Jenny's number. My thumb hovered. The memory of the anonymous texts flashed across my mind. "We need to talk. Don't trust Richard." Whoever was sending them had known where I was, what I'd found. Could Jenny be behind them, or someone else entirely? Before I could decide, another buzz. Same number, ledger in cellar, wall too short. Look closer. My skin prickled. Whoever it was, they were watching us. "Who is that?" Elena asked, reading my face. "I don't know, but they want us to find the ledger." Tom cursed under his breath. "Or they want to lure us back so Richard can finish what he started." The room went still. The hum of Elena's refrigerator sounded suddenly ominous. Finally, Elena broke the silence. "Tomorrow morning. Daylight. We go back. We get the ledger. Then we take everything straight to Jenny. Agreed?" I looked at the notebook in my lap. Marcus's handwriting staring up at me. My husband had been part of this. He had watched me, studied me, manipulated me, and maybe, just maybe, tried to protect me at the end. "Agreed," I whispered. That night, sleep was an illusion. I dreamed of knocks under floorboards, of Richard's pale eyes, of Marcus's voice saying, "Promise me," in tones I no longer understood. By dawn, I was dressed and waiting by the door. The sky was a bruised gray, clouds heavy with the threat of rain. Tom pulled up in his truck, tools rattling in the bed. Elena slid in beside me, her camera ready. The shack looked worse in daylight, if that was possible. Sagging, skeletal, the vines strangling it like nature wanted to reclaim its rot. Inside, dust motes swirled, innocent and damning. Tom went straight to the back wall, tapping, measuring. Elena was right. This room is too small. There's space unaccounted for. He pried at the boards with the crowbar. Wood splintered. A hollow echoed. Behind the false wall, a narrow passage, a hidden space, and at the far end, a ladder descending into deeper dark. Elena whispered, "Ledger?" I tightened my grip on the flashlight. Whatever waited below had been buried for decades. But Richard's calm certainty, his smug threats, they all pointed to this place. The ledger was waiting, and so were the ghosts of everything Marcus hadn't told me. I put my foot on the first rung. The ladder groaned beneath my weight, the sound sharp and hollow as if the shack itself disapproved of my descent. My flashlight beam trembled, carving shaky circles into the darkness below. The cellar air was different from the one above, colder, heavier, metallic. When my boots hit cement, the echo told me this wasn't some dirt-dug hole. It was deliberate, constructed, planned. Tom came down next, his crowbar strapped to his back like a soldier preparing for war. Elena followed, camera raised, her breathing loud in the silence. The walls down here weren't rotting wood. They were reinforced concrete, clean lines pressed into place decades ago. Shelves lined every side, stacked with bankers' boxes labeled in blocky handwriting. Dates, code names. I lifted a lid and froze. Inside, photographs. Me at 17, walking home from school. Me at 20, on a college campus bench, headphones on, unaware. Me at 23, sitting in a cafe, waiting for a date that had never shown up. Every moment I thought was private. Every step of my life cataloged. Elena gasped, covering her mouth. "Leora, this is years before Marcus, before you even met him." I nodded numbly. My throat was tight, but I forced words through. They were watching me, grooming me. Tom rifled through another box, and his curse cut the air. Cash, bundles of it, old bills, serial numbers in sequence. He pulled one out, holding it like it burned. This is evidence of laundering, organized crime, decades worth. I turned slowly, my flashlight beam catching the corner of a workbench. Wires, cameras, recorders, even phone tapping devices. Surveillance on a scale that made paranoia look quaint. But it was the box on the bottom shelf that made my blood run cold. My maiden name scrawled across it in thick marker. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were reports written like case studies. Psychological profiles of me. Vulnerabilities mapped out with clinical precision. Subject exhibits, abandonment issues from father's departure. Responds strongly to male authority figures. Highly susceptible to protective gestures. Recommend Marcus assume paternal stance before shifting to romantic interest. My stomach flipped. He knew, I whispered. Marcus knew everything about me before we met. Tears blurred the words on the page. I dropped the file back into the box as if it had burned me. Tom touched my shoulder. This isn't love. This is a program, a plan. I wanted to scream, to claw the cement walls until they bled dust. Instead, I pulled out the notebook again, flipping to Marcus's last entry. Ledger secured. Subject remains unaware. Risk increasing. The ledger, I said hoarsely. It's down here. It has to be. We searched, prying open boxes, scattering papers across the concrete. Elena snapped photo after photo, her camera shutter a frantic heartbeat. Then she stopped suddenly. Wait, this room, it doesn't make sense. What do you mean? Tom asked. She pointed to the far wall. Look, the outside dimensions of this shack, this should be 3 feet wider. There's space missing. Tom ran his hands along the wall, pressing, tapping. Finally, he found it. A seam, faint but real. There's something behind this. He jammed the crowbar in and pulled. Concrete cracked. A panel shifted with a groan, and dust rained down. Behind it, a narrow opening, a deeper chamber, a second cellar. The air that rushed out was stale and bitter, like secrets exhaled after years of silence. I aimed my flashlight through the gap. A ladder descended into deeper dark. Tom muttered, Jesus Christ, how far down does this go? Elena clutched her camera tighter. Leora, maybe we shouldn't... But I was already climbing. My heart pounded, but something stronger than fear pulled me downward. A voice in my head, Marcus's voice, whispering, if anything happens to me, stay away from the shack. And beneath that warning, the truth. He had left me the shack because it mattered. My boots touched concrete again. This chamber was smaller, claustrophobic, but against the back wall stood a single filing cabinet, metal scarred with age but locked tight. Elena's voice floated down. Do you see anything? Yes, I said, my hand trembling on the cabinet's handle. I see everything. Because I already knew what was inside. The ledger, the record of sins, and maybe the reason Marcus was dead. The cabinet resisted me, the lock rusted but stubborn, as if it knew what it was holding back. Tom descended behind me, metal rungs groaning, then planted his boots beside mine. He swung the crowbar into the drawer seam, the clang of steel on steel echoing like gunfire in the tight chamber. With a crack the lock gave, the top drawer screeched open. Inside were ledgers bound in cracked leather, their spines lined in neat gold lettering. Years stamped in order. 1987, 1993, 2001. Each one like a gravestone for a year I thought was just history. I pulled the 1987 volume. The first page made my hands go cold. Termination Order Number 01. Subject, Joseph Fisher. Method, disappearance. Status, complete. Authorized, R. Whitmore. My great-uncle. The name whispered in family stories but never explained. And here, in Marcus's father's own handwriting, was the truth. He had been murdered. Tom flipped through another ledger. His face drained of color. This isn't just 1 or 2 hits. These are dozens, maybe hundreds. Property seizures, shell corporations, bank accounts, every crime documented like it was bookkeeping. Elena's voice shook as she leaned over the opening above us, snapping photos furiously. Lyora, this is it. This could bury them forever. My hand trembled as I opened a later volume. The words hit me like a physical blow. Termination Order, number 47. Subject, Marcus Whitmore. Reason, Security breach. Potential whistleblower. Method. Vehicular incident. Status. Complete. Authorized. R. Whitmore. The edges of my vision darkened. My husband. My betrayer. My protector. Executed like an employee who broke contract. I pressed a fist against my mouth, fighting the scream that clawed its way up my throat. Tears blurred the ink, and I wiped them away furiously. I wouldn't give Richard the satisfaction of my breakdown. Then I turned the page, and the air left my lungs. Termination Order No. 48. Subject: Lyora Vale Whitmore. Reason: inherited liability. Method: TBD. Status: pending. God, Tom whispered. They've already signed your death warrant. The cement chamber closed in around me. My skin prickled like it knew the crosshairs were already there. Above us, Elena's voice trembled. We need to get out. Right now. We have enough. This is enough. But I couldn't move. My hand clutched the ledger like it was the only anchor in a storm. Because here was the proof. Proof that Marcus hadn't been careless. Proof that Richard had ordered his own son's death. Proof that I was next. We can't just run, I said, my voice raw. If we leave with only pictures, Richard will bury this again. We need the originals. We need everything. Tom nodded grimly. Then we take it all. Load the truck. Tonight. We hauled the ledgers, boxes, and files up one by one. Elena filmed every step, her camera catching sweat on our faces, the tremble in my hands, the shadows shifting in the corners. By the time we collapsed onto the shack's floor, surrounded by evidence, the sun outside had dipped low. The light through the boarded windows was blood orange. And then we heard it. Engines, more than one, gravel crunching, tires stopping. Tom darted to the window. His curse was quiet but sharp. SUVs, black, at least 3, armed men getting out. Elena's camera kept rolling, almost frantic now. Richard's here. I shoved the ledgers into my bag, heart slamming against my ribs. For a moment, I remembered Marcus's voice. That last drunken night before he died. If anything happens to me, stay away from the shack. Promise me. I hadn't promised. And now the men were outside. Richard's voice called through the door, calm as ever. Leora, enough games. You've seen what you weren't meant to. Bring the ledger out, and maybe your friends walk away. Tom raised the crowbar like a weapon. Elena's hand found mine, her grip ice cold. And I realized this was no longer just about Marcus, or Joseph Fisher, or even me. This was about everyone Richard had silenced. I straightened, clutching the bag tight. Then we don't give him a choice. The first blow rattled the shack's door, splinters flying. The second made the hinges scream. The third would bring it down. The door shuddered a third time, hinges groaning like they were about to tear free. Dust rained from the rafters. My heart beat so hard I thought Richard could hear it. Tom braced himself with the crowbar, jaw clenched, sweat dripping down his temple. Elena had her camera lifted, still filming, her other hand locked around mine like if she let go, I'd vanish. Richard's voice came again, smooth, deliberate. Leora, think carefully. That ledger won't save you. It'll bury you. Your fingerprints are all over those pages. Do you really want to spend what's left of your life in prison? His words crawled under my skin because they were half true. If the ledger was exposed without context, I could be painted as an accomplice, not a victim. My mind flickered with the image. My mugshot next to Marcus's obituary, headlines screaming, wife involved in syndicate scandal. I forced the thought down. If I walk out there, I shouted back, it won't be with a ledger. It'll be with every secret you've ever buried. The world will know who you are. Silence. Then the sound of a chuckle, low and cold. You sound just like Marcus, Richard said, and you see where that got him. The final blow cracked the door inward, splinters flying. A suited man stepped through, gun raised. Tom lunged, swinging the crowbar into his wrist. The gun clattered across the floor. Elena screamed but kept filming, the red recording light unwavering. 2 more men pushed in, shoving the broken door wider. I grabbed the fallen gun, hands shaking, and aimed at the opening. My finger hesitated on the trigger until I remembered the ledger's page with my name. Termination Order No. 48. Status: pending. I fired. The shot cracked like thunder, deafening in the shack's cramped space. One of the men staggered back, clutching his arm, howling. The other ducked low, returning fire. A bullet slammed into the wall inches from my head, splintering wood. Tom dragged a table over, flipping it onto its side for cover. Move, he barked. We ducked behind it as another volley ripped through the shack. Through the chaos, Richard's voice rose, calm, cutting through gunfire like a sermon. You can't win this, Leora. Even if you kill me, there are others, stronger, smarter. This syndicate isn't built on one man. It's built on generations. And you... His tone twisted, almost gentle. You were meant to be part of it. Never, I shouted back. Another shot cracked. Elena ducked lower, gasping, clutching her camera against her chest as if it could shield her. Her eyes met mine, wide with terror, but burning with something else. Defiance. Tom yelled over the gunfire, "We can't hold out, too many." I looked at the ledger, heavy in my bag, then at Elena's camera. She had footage, photos, proof. If we could just get out alive, Jenny Martinez could blast this into daylight where Richard's shadows couldn't reach. Back way, I hissed. There has to be one. Marcus wouldn't leave this place without an exit. Tom nodded, scanning the shack. Then he pointed, the boarded window. There. We crawled, bullets splintering wood around us. Tom smashed the crowbar into the boards, tearing them loose. Sunlight spilled in, harsh and golden, like freedom just out of reach. Go, Tom barked. Elena went first, squeezing through, landing in the grass outside. I shoved the bag with the ledger through after her, then scrambled, my shoulders scraping splinters. The air outside was shockingly fresh, sharp in my lungs. Tom followed, but as he cleared the window, a shout rang out. One of Richard's men had rounded the shack, weapon raised. Without thinking, I swung the gun still in my hand. The shot hit him square in the chest. He dropped, dust rising around his crumpled body. My stomach lurched, bile climbing my throat. I had killed him. But Elena grabbed my face, forcing me to meet her eyes. You saved us. Don't you dare look away now. Engines roared to life, more SUVs pulling in, gravel spitting. Richard's men fanning out. Tom hauled me to my feet. We can't fight them all. Run! So we ran. Through the weeds, into the tree line, clutching the ledger like it was oxygen. Bullets tore bark from trees. Branches whipped our faces, our breath ragged. Behind us, Richard's voice rose one last time, carried on the wind. You can't hide from me, Leora. You are me. And I will finish what Marcus couldn't. My legs burned, lungs seared, but I didn't stop. Not until the shack's silhouette disappeared between the trees, and only the sound of our pounding hearts remained. Branches whipped against my arms as we tore through the tree line, every breath a fire in my lungs. Tom kept glancing back, crowbar still in his hand like he'd fight off an army if he had to. Elena clutched her camera to her chest, its red light still blinking as if recording our terror for the world to see. The ground sloped downward, the forest thinning, and then we burst into a clearing where Tom's truck sat hidden behind a wall of brush. He'd parked it here on purpose, precaution he hadn't mentioned, but that might have just saved our lives. Get in, he barked. We piled in, the ledger bag shoved between us like sacred cargo. Tom gunned the engine, gravel spitting, tires screaming as we hit the narrow dirt road. Behind us, engines roared. The black SUVs had found us. Hold on, Tom growled. The truck jolted, fishtailing around a bend. My fingers dug into the seat, knuckles white. In the side mirror, I saw the SUVs gaining, their glossy paint glinting between trees like predators' eyes. Elena twisted in her seat, camera raised despite the chaos. I've got them, she said breathlessly. License plates, faces, evidence. A shot rang out. The back window shattered, glass spraying like ice across the cab. I ducked instinctively, heart hammering. Tom swore, wrenching the wheel. They'll run us off the road. Then don't give them a road, I snapped. He understood immediately. With a sharp turn, he veered off the dirt path into the woods. Branches screeched against the sides, the truck bouncing over roots and stones. The SUVs tried to follow, but their bulk snagged on trees, slowed by the narrow gaps. We gained ground, but the relief was fragile. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Another message from the unknown number. Coastal Tribune, Jenny. Trust her. I showed it to Elena, her eyes widened. It's telling us where to go, Tom snarled, or leading us into another trap. No, I said firmly, clutching the ledger bag. Whoever this is, they've been right so far. The ledger has to see daylight, Tom, and Jenny's the only one who can do it. Silence, broken only by the rattle of the truck. Then Tom nodded once, hard. Hold on tight. We burst from the woods onto asphalt, tires shrieking as we fishtailed onto the main road. Behind us, 2 SUVs broke free of the trees, closing fast. The town rose ahead, rooftops and church spires, the faint gleam of glass downtown. And there, like a beacon, the sign for the Coastal Tribune. Almost there, Elena whispered. The SUVs accelerated, closing the gap. One swerved, trying to cut us off. Tom slammed the truck into the other lane, horn blaring as oncoming cars swerved in terror. "Tom!" I screamed. "Trust me," he shouted back. He cut hard right, barreling into the Tribune's parking lot. Tires screamed, the truck skidding to a halt so violently we were thrown against our belts. "Out!" Tom roared. We grabbed the ledger and ran, sprinting through the glass doors of the Tribune. The receptionist startled, but before she could say a word, Elena shouted, "Get Jenny Martinez, now!" Jenny herself appeared at the top of the stairs, mid-conversation on her phone. When she saw us, her eyes widened, sharp journalist's instinct clocking everything at once. The bags, the blood, the terror. "Upstairs," she barked, dropping the phone. "Now!" We ran, boots thundering on the stairs, hearts thundering louder. Behind us, engines growled into the lot. SUV doors slammed. Inside the newsroom, fluorescent lights hummed, the smell of ink and coffee thick. Jenny cleared a desk, snapping her fingers at her staff. "Scanners, cameras, every hand on deck. What do you have?" I dropped the ledger onto the desk, pages spilling open to termination order number 47. "My husband," I gasped, voice breaking. "They killed him. His father ordered it, and I'm next." Jenny's eyes scanned the page, her sharp expression faltering just once before Steele returned. She snapped her head toward her staff. "Get this copied, digitized, uploaded to every secure server we have. Now!" Elena thrust her camera forward. "I've got video, the shack, the files, Richard's men, everything." Jenny nodded, already moving. "Good, good. This is it. This blows them open." But even as the newsroom buzzed into frantic motion, I felt it, the cold certainty crawling up my spine. Richard wouldn't let this end here. Through the window, I saw the SUVs lining up outside, men in suits emerging, calm, deliberate, not charging in, not yet, waiting. Richard was out there somewhere, watching, and I knew he wasn't done. Through the wide newsroom windows, I saw Richard step out of one of the SUVs. He didn't hurry. He didn't need to. His steel gray eyes swept the building like he already owned it, phone pressed casually to his ear. 2 men flanked him, scanning the parking lot, their jackets stiff over the unmistakable weight of concealed weapons. Jenny cursed under her breath. He came himself. Her staff kept working, scanners humming, camera shutters clicking, the ledger pages multiplying into data. But panic was creeping in, shoulders hunched, glances flicking toward the glass doors. I pressed my palms flat against the desk, leaning toward Jenny. "You have to publish it now, live, before he can touch us." She studied me, eyes sharp, calculating. Then she snapped her fingers. "Live stream. Get the cameras set. We're going live in 10. Her team jolted into motion. Screens wheeled into place, microphones clipped, lights switched on. The newsroom buzzed like a hive, preparing for war. Elena squeezed my hand. "This is it. We end them here." But Tom shook his head, peering through the blinds. "Or they end us first." My phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. "They'll jam signals. Only live gets through. Hold your ground." My throat tightened. Whoever was sending these messages, ally or manipulator, they knew too much. But they were right. Jenny took her place in front of the camera, her expression composed steel. "We go on my count," she murmured. "Stay close. If they break in, we keep recording no matter what." The red light blinked on. 3, 2, 1. "Good evening," Jenny's voice rang out, steady and clear, broadcast to whoever was watching. "We interrupt tonight's programming with evidence of a criminal syndicate that has controlled this city for 40 years. I stood behind her, ledger open in my hands, the damning words visible to the camera. Termination order number 47. Through the window, I saw Richard stiffen, his phone lowering slowly. He knew. The story was leaving his control. Jenny continued, each word a hammer strike. Ledgers detailing ordered killings, fraudulent property transfers, laundered money tied to officials at every level of government. This evidence, signed and authorized, implicates Richard Whitmore and his associates directly. Her staff worked furiously, uploading scans, projecting images onto screens behind her. Marcus's death order, Joseph Fisher's, even mine. The newsroom doors shook violently. Someone tried the handle, then slammed against it. Reporters flinched but kept filming. Jenny's voice never wavered. We are broadcasting live across multiple platforms. This evidence cannot be silenced. The people deserve to know. Richard's face turned upward, eyes locking with mine through the glass. He didn't rage. He didn't shout. He simply mouthed two words. Well played. Then he lifted his hand. The men beside him didn't draw weapons. They stepped back. The SUV's engines revved. And just like that, they pulled away. The newsroom exhaled in collective shock. Phones buzzed. Screens lit with notifications. Already comments poured in from viewers. Shock. Outrage. Demands for arrests. Jenny turned to me, eyes blazing. It's out. They can't bury this now. But my phone buzzed again. Another message from the same number. Not over. Ledger only part 1. Basement of courthouse. File 9C. Go now. Before they do. I stared at the words, heart thudding. More secrets. More rot. And someone guiding me deeper, step by step. Leora? Elena's voice was soft, wary. What is it? I closed the ledger, clutching it tight. It's not over, I whispered. Not even close. And I knew, with a chill that sank to my bones, that Richard hadn't retreated in defeat. He was waiting for the next move. The newsroom was chaos. Reporters shouting into phones, printers spitting out copies of ledger pages, Jenny barking orders like a general in wartime. But all I could hear was the faint buzz of my phone in my hand. Basement of courthouse. File 9C. Go now. Before they do. Elena hovered at my shoulder, her eyes darting between my face and the screen. Lyora, no. Whoever this is, they're playing you. First the shack, now the courthouse. It's a breadcrumb trail, and you're following it straight into the wolf's mouth. Tom crossed his arms, jaw tight. She's not wrong. Richard just backed off. Why? Because he knows you'll keep digging. He wants you exactly where this message is sending you. But something deeper than logic stirred inside me. Marcus's handwriting in the notebook, his warning, his hesitation in those final weeks. The way he had looked at me, like he wanted to tell me everything but couldn't. He left me this path, I whispered, gripping the phone tighter. If Marcus was gathering evidence, he didn't stop with the shack. There's more. Something Richard couldn't destroy. If we walk away now, Richard rebuilds. Stronger, untouchable. Jenny approached, her eyes fierce. Ledger pages clutched in her hands. You're right. What we have is explosive, but it's not enough to dismantle the whole network. The courthouse records. That could be the nail in their coffin. But if you go, you won't be walking in blind. She raised her phone, dialing quickly. I'll call Martinez at the FBI. The state agents already circling will back you up. If Richard planted something down there, we'll know. Tom shook his head, frustration etched in every line. You're all insane. This isn't journalism, it's suicide. I looked at him, then at Elena, who was pale but steady, camera still in her hands. You don't have to come. Elena grabbed my wrist, her voice trembling but firm. Don't you dare shut me out. You're my sister. I'm with you, no matter where this goes. Something in my chest cracked. Not fear, but a strange, desperate gratitude. Tom muttered a curse and slung the crowbar over his shoulder. Fine, but if this is a trap, I'm not dying politely. Jenny gave me one last look. Whatever's in file 9C, if it exists, you bring it back here, alive. Understand? I nodded. My phone buzzed again. Same number. Hurry. Minutes later, Tom's truck roared down Main Street, headlights cutting through the deepening night. Elena filmed from the passenger seat, documenting everything. I sat in the back, the ledger heavy on my lap, the phone in my hand like a compass pointing toward something darker than I was ready for. The courthouse loomed ahead, its stone facade lit by harsh floodlights. Normally imposing, tonight it looked like a mausoleum of secrets. The lot was nearly empty. Too empty. Tom killed the engine. We shouldn't be here, he muttered. But I was already out of the truck, clutching the keycard Jenny had pressed into my palm before we left. We don't have a choice. The basement stairs smelled of mildew and dust, fluorescent bulbs buzzing overhead. Our footsteps echoed, each one too loud. The walls pressed in, lined with old filing cabinets, boxes stacked to the ceiling, the air stale with decades of paper. We searched row by row, the numbers painted in peeling white. 7B, 8A, 9. There, Elena whispered, her flashlight beam landing on a dented cabinet marked 9C. I stepped forward, my hand trembling as I pulled the drawer. It screeched open. Inside, files bound with brittle string, labeled with neat typewritten tags. Property deeds. Court transcripts. and tucked between them, a folder heavier than the rest. I pulled it free. The tag read simply, Whitmore Vane Fisher, 1987. My breath caught. Inside were documents that made my blood run cold, the original property deeds under my mother's maiden name, Fisher. Proof that half the city had been built on stolen land. Fraudulent transfer contracts. Witness testimonies never filed in court. And at the very back, photographs. Crime scene photos of Joseph Fisher's disappearance. Elena gasped. Tom's flashlight shook. Because one photo showed Richard himself, younger but unmistakable, standing over Joseph Fisher's crumpled body. Before we could process it, a sound echoed through the basement. Footsteps, slow, deliberate. Then Richard's voice, calm and venomous, drifting between the rows of files. I told you, Leora, every step you take just buries you deeper. The sound of his voice slithered through the basement like smoke, curling around the filing cabinets, finding every dark corner. Elena's flashlight beam jerked, bouncing off the steel drawers, throwing long, fractured shadows across the floor. Tom raised the crowbar, his knuckles white, jaw clenched. He's alone, he whispered. Has to be. No backup would fit through these rows. But I knew better. Richard never came alone. He didn't need numbers, just the certainty that he already controlled the board. My hand clutched the folder tighter, the brittle paper inside crinkling. The photo of Joseph Fisher's body burned in my mind, Richard standing over it like he was already rehearsing decades of denials. Come out, Richard's voice coaxed, almost paternal. We don't have to do this in the dark. Bring me what you've found, and I'll make this easy. You, your sister, your friend, you'll walk away. Elena's hand slid into mine, trembling. Don't listen. He'll kill us the second he gets it. I forced my breath steady, though my pulse raced. Then we don't give it to him. Tom moved first, edging forward between the cabinets, crowbar raised. The footsteps stopped. Silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then, a metallic click, the unmistakable sound of a safety sliding off. Tom froze. Richard's voice came again, closer now, rich with mockery. Clever boy. But do you really think a crowbar outruns a bullet? I swallowed hard, forcing myself to speak. Why catalog it all, Richard? The ledgers, the photographs, the files down here. If you're so powerful, why keep proof of your own crimes? For the first time, his tone shifted, harsher, sharper. Because control requires memory. History belongs to the one who writes it. Joseph forgot that. Marcus forgot it. And now you. He stopped abruptly. Because I had stepped out from behind the cabinet, folder clutched in my arms like a shield, flashlight beam cutting straight across his face. Richard Whitmore stood 20 feet away, gun leveled at my chest. His suit was immaculate, hair silvered at the temples, eyes glinting with something colder than rage. You look just like him, he said softly. Fisher, same fire, same mistake. Elena cried out, Don't, please! Richard didn't flinch. Hand me the file, Leora. Every instinct screamed to obey, to survive. But then I remembered Marcus's handwriting in the notebook. Subject acquired. Surveillance begins tomorrow. And then the last entry, risk increasing. He hadn't been just documenting me. He had been warning me, leaving a trail. No, I said, my voice shaking but loud. This goes to the world. You don't get to bury another body, another secret. Richard's jaw tightened. His finger twitched on the trigger. And then light exploded behind him. Elena's camera. She had raised it, flash blinding, the shutter firing in rapid bursts. Richard cursed, stumbling half a step, his aim faltering. Tom surged forward, crowbar swinging. The gunshot cracked, deafening in the narrow space. Sparks flew as the bullet struck a cabinet. Tom's crowbar slammed into Richard's wrist, the gun clattering to the floor. Run! Tom roared. We bolted, the folder clutched to my chest, Elena's camera bouncing against her ribs. Richard's shouts echoed behind us, mingled with the scrape of boots. His men, after all, hidden in the shadows. The stairwell loomed ahead. We flew up the steps, the smell of mildew and dust replaced by the sharp bite of night air as we burst out into the courthouse parking lot. And froze. SUVs ringed the lot, headlights blinding, engines rumbling like predators. Richard stepped out behind us, blood trickling from his wrist, face twisted but composed. You can't run, Leora. You were born into this. You are this. I clutched the folder tighter, my voice hoarse but unbroken. No, Richard, I'm the end of this. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, closer. Richard's eyes flicked toward the sound, then back to me. Cold calculation settled over his features. "This isn't over," he said, voice low, dangerous, not even close. And with a sharp gesture, he slid into the nearest SUV. Doors slammed, engines revved. The convoy peeled away into the night just as the flashing lights of FBI and state police cars turned into the lot. I sank to my knees, folder still clutched to my chest, breath tearing out of me. Elena dropped beside me, wrapping her arms around my shoulders, her camera still recording. Tom stood guard, crowbar raised, even as the sirens surrounded us. The evidence was safe, for now, but Richard's words clung like a curse, not even close. Floodlights snapped on, washing the courthouse lot in harsh white. FBI agents fanned out, weapons raised, voices barking commands that cut through the wail of sirens. Red and blue strobed across the night, bouncing off the empty SUV tire tracks Richard had left behind. "Drop the weapon!" someone shouted. Tom froze, crowbar still clenched in his hands. Slowly, carefully, he lowered it to the asphalt and raised both arms. Elena lifted her camera, showing she was unarmed, though the red recording light still blinked defiantly. I didn't move. Couldn't. The folder was still clutched to my chest, papers digging into my skin through the manila. My knuckles ached from the grip. An agent in tactical gear approached, gun steady. "Ma'am, I need you to put that down." I shook my head violently. "No, you don't understand. If I let this out of my hands, it disappears. Just like everything else." Another voice cut through the chaos. Firm, commanding. "Hold fire. Lower your weapons." A woman stepped forward from the swarm of agents, mid-40s, dark blazer over a Kevlar vest, badge flashing at her hip. She carried herself like someone used to being obeyed. Her eyes found mine immediately. "Mrs. Whitmore?" she asked. My stomach lurched at the name, but I nodded. She stopped a few feet away, her hands visible, calm. "I'm Special Agent Sarah Coleman, FBI. We've been tracking the Whitmore syndicate for years. We know who Richard is. We know what he's done. But if you've got the proof you say you do," she nodded toward the folder, "that changes everything." Her voice was steady, but I searched her face for cracks. Richard's reach went everywhere. Judges, police, city officials. Could the FBI be any different? "Why should I trust you?" My voice cracked, brittle as glass. Coleman didn't flinch. "Because your husband tried to trust us. Marcus contacted us in the last months of his life. He was preparing to hand over the ledger. He died before he could." The world tilted under me. Marcus, contacting the FBI. I wanted to demand proof, to scream that it wasn't true, but a small, traitorous hope flickered in my chest. Had he been trying to protect me, after all? Elena's grip tightened on my arm. "Leora, look." Other agents were hauling out boxes from the courthouse basement, evidence bags already being filled. They weren't here to destroy. They were here to collect. Agent Coleman extended her hand, not demanding, offering. "Let us help you finish what he started." I stared at the folder, at my white-knuckled grip. Slowly, painfully, I loosened my fingers. The papers were crumpled where I'd held them too tightly, but intact. Proof, truth. I placed them in her hands. Relief flickered in her eyes. "We'll get this into secure custody immediately. Multiple copies. They won't vanish this time." The weight left my hands, but not my shoulders. Because as the agents moved, as the evidence was bagged and cataloged, I couldn't shake Richard's final words. Not even close. Somewhere out there, he was regrouping, rebuilding, waiting. And I knew in my bones, this was only the beginning. The courthouse lot buzzed with activity. Agents stringing up yellow tape. Reporters already circling the perimeter. The smell of exhaust and sweat hanging thick in the night. Floodlights bleached every shadow into sharpness. But inside me, darkness still churned. I stood off to the side, Elena's arm around my shoulders, Tom hovering like a bodyguard. Crowbar now confiscated, but his fists still balled tight. My hands twitched with the phantom weight of the folder I'd surrendered. Agent Coleman approached again, her face composed but softer now. "You did the right thing, Mrs. Whitmore." The name scraped raw inside me. I forced my chin up. "Vale. My name is Leora Vale." She inclined her head, accepting the correction. "Ms. Vale, then. The evidence you gave us is already being scanned into federal servers. By morning, indictments will be drafted. Richard won't be able to run forever." Forever. The word felt meaningless. Richard had resources, networks, men who obeyed with the devotion of zealots, and his voice still rang in my ears, not even close. A shout went up near the evidence trucks. Agents clustered around a crate they'd hauled from the basement. Coleman excused herself, striding briskly to oversee. Elena and I exchanged a glance, and curiosity pulled us forward. Inside the crate, neatly stacked, were videotapes. Hundreds of them, labeled with dates stretching back decades. An agent held one up, brows furrowed. The label read simply, Subject L.V. 2009. My breath hitched. L.V. Leora Vale. I reached for it instinctively, but Coleman intercepted, her expression grave. We'll review all of these in secure facilities, Elena whispered, horrified. They taped you? Not just me. My gut knew it. These weren't only surveillance tapes of one girl. They were archives of dozens, maybe hundreds of lives monitored, manipulated, destroyed. The shack had been the surface. The courthouse was the rot beneath. My phone buzzed in my pocket. For a second, I thought it might be another anonymous message, but this time the screen showed only 2 words from the same number. Look up. Confused, I lifted my eyes. Across the street, on the roof of a neighboring building, a silhouette stood against the floodlight glow, tall, still, watching. The shape raised a hand in a slow salute, then stepped backward, vanishing into the darkness. I froze. Elena followed my gaze, but saw nothing. What is it? My mouth went dry. I think it was him. Who? I swallowed hard. Marcus. Elena's hand tightened on mine, her voice barely a whisper. But he's dead. My heart slammed against my ribs. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was grief, twisting shadows into ghosts. But the text still glowed on my phone. Look up. And for the first time since Marcus's death, a sliver of doubt, no, of hope, cut through the terror. Was he alive? Or was Richard playing one last game with me? Either way, I knew this wasn't finished. Agent Coleman's radio crackled, breaking my trance. We've secured the basement. Evidence is being transported. 2 suspects in custody. She answered with clipped efficiency, but her eyes flicked toward me, following my line of sight to the rooftop where the silhouette had been. There's nothing up there now, she said quietly, as if reading my thoughts. Whoever you think you saw is gone. But the text still glowed on my phone like a heartbeat. Look up. Elena gripped my arm. Leora, if Marcus really is alive... I cut her off, voice low. If he's alive, he's in danger, and so are we. Coleman stepped closer, lowering her voice. Ms. Vale, I need you to come with us now. We're moving you to a secure location tonight. No more freelancing. Richard's already crossed every line. If he thinks you're still digging, he'll escalate. I glanced at the trucks where agents were loading crates of videotapes, documents, even a dented metal lockbox stamped Pfizer Trust. All of it bagged, tagged, locked behind federal seals. Evidence, truth, 40 years of rot. I should have felt relief, but instead a cold unease spread through me. This was how it always started. A promise of safety, evidence disappearing into government vaults, ongoing investigations that never ended. Marcus had trusted them once. He'd ended up on termination order number 47. No safe houses, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Every place they've tried to protect people, Richard's reached them. You think he won't reach me there too? Coleman didn't flinch, but her jaw tightened. Then what's your plan? I held up my phone. This number has led me to every piece of evidence so far. The shack, the courthouse. It's not random. Somebody's feeding me what Richard can't erase. If Marcus is alive, or someone working with him, then they're the only reason I'm still breathing. Tom swore under his breath. You're trusting an anonymous text over federal protection? I'm trusting results, I shot back. You saw what we pulled out of that basement. Without those texts, none of this exists. Elena's voice was small but steady. What if it's a trap? What if Richard's the one sending them? I met her eyes. Then it's already too late. Coleman exhaled slowly, then nodded once. Fine. But if you're going to keep chasing these breadcrumbs, you're not doing it alone. I'm assigning a detail. You'll move like a convoy. Full surveillance, encrypted comms, no blind spots. She turned, barking orders at her team. Agents began to reposition, forming a perimeter around us like a living wall. I looked down at my phone again. The text bubble was still open, blinking like it was waiting for me. Without thinking, I typed, "If you're Marcus, prove it." For a moment, nothing. Then 3 dots appeared. Typing. Stopped. Typing again. A reply popped up. 1847. Window board. Last night you hid behind the couch. You had my wedding band in your pocket. My stomach dropped. Nobody else knew that. Not Elena. Not Tom, only me and Marcus. Another text appeared. Follow the deeds. Box 1847. Your inheritance is their weapon. Use it. Elena peeked at the screen, her breath catching. It's him, she whispered. It has to be. Tom stared, skeptical but pale. Or somebody who's been watching you as closely as they watched Marcus. I stared at the glowing screen, Marcus's words, if they were his, burning into my mind. Use it. I looked up at the courthouse, at the crates of evidence rolling into the FBI trucks. Proof of decades of theft. Proof of blood on Richard's hands. It was all mine now, my family's, my weapon. And I realized with a jolt that Marcus, or whoever this was, wasn't just telling me to uncover the truth. He was telling me to fight back. The text on my phone felt like a live wire in my hand, every word vibrating through me. Use it. Not just keep it or save it. Use it. Elena was staring at me, her camera finally lowered. If that's Marcus, then he's not just alive. He's still pulling strings. Tom muttered a curse, rubbing his jaw. Or someone wants you to think that, so you'll step up and do something bold that gets you killed. Agent Coleman returned, flanked by 2 agents carrying sealed evidence boxes. We're moving the materials to a secure facility, she said. We'll process the tapes overnight, and you 3 are coming with us. But I didn't move. The courthouse's cold stone steps loomed behind me. The agents' SUVs idled, their engines a low hum. The town beyond was quiet, but only because it didn't know yet what was about to break loose. I tightened my grip on the phone. Box 1847, I said aloud. My mother's maiden name, the shack's address. Everything leads back to it. Coleman's brow furrowed. What's in 1847? I looked at her. The original deeds, my family's land. Their entire empire sits on stolen property, and the title still flows through me. That's why they needed me alive. That's why Marcus married me. It's leverage. She studied me for a long beat. If you can prove ownership, you don't just have leverage. You have a bomb, a legal one. I nodded slowly. Exactly. And Marcus, if it is Marcus, just told me to light the fuse. Elena's hand slid into mine. Leora, you're talking about suing them? Or, not just suing, I said quietly, reclaiming everything. Freezing their assets. Funding a case so airtight the DOJ can't ignore it. Using their own stolen wealth to destroy them. Tom gave a short, incredulous laugh. You're serious. Deadly, I said. Coleman tilted her head, and for the first time, there was something like respect in her eyes. That's dangerous, Ms. Vale. If you go public with that claim, you'll paint a target the size of a courthouse on your back. I glanced at the phone again. Another text had appeared, like a whisper. They already know. But they're not ready for you to fight back. I exhaled, my decision settling like a stone at the bottom of a lake. Then we don't wait. We go on the offensive before they can regroup. Coleman hesitated, then nodded once. We can help. Federal witness protection, investigative support, legal counsel, but you have to stay under our umbrella. I looked past her at the night sky over the courthouse. Somewhere out there, Marcus, or his ghost, was watching. No, I said softly. I have to do this in the open. That's the only way they can't make me disappear quietly. Elena squeezed my hand tighter, her voice trembling but resolute. Then we all do it together. No more secrets. Coleman's radio crackled again, a voice urgent. Agent Coleman, be advised. Unmarked vehicles inbound. Multiple. ETA 2 minutes. Coleman's expression hardened. That's not ours. She turned, shouting commands. Agents moved instantly, forming a perimeter, weapons drawn. Tom's jaw tightened. Here we go. Headlights flared at the far end of the street. Not black SUVs this time, but white vans. No logos. Windows blacked out. They rolled slow, deliberate, engines low and ominous. Coleman barked into her radio. All units, prepare for contact. My phone buzzed again. Don't run. This is your moment. I felt the hair rise on the back of my neck. He's telling me to stay, I whispered. Elena stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Leora, this could be another hit team. I straightened, heart hammering, clutching the phone and the knowledge like a shield. Or it's the only chance we'll ever have to end this. The van slowed to a stop. Doors began to open. And in the harsh courthouse floodlights, the next chapter of this war stepped out into view. The van doors opened with slow, deliberate precision. The air felt charged, as if the whole courthouse lot had inhaled and was holding its breath. FBI agents tightened their perimeter, weapons raised, Coleman at the front, shouting, "Federal agents, hands where I can see them." For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then figures stepped out of the vans one by one. Not men in suits, not masked gunmen. Ordinary-looking people, middle-aged, young, old, in work clothes and winter jackets, dozens of them. Some held folders, some held phones. Some just stood with their hands visible. "They're not armed," one of Coleman's agents murmured, bewildered. I stared, my breath catching. "Who are they?" One of the figures, a wiry woman in a red scarf, stepped forward and lifted a thick envelope over her head. "We're witnesses," she called. "We have evidence." "Witnesses," she called. A murmur rolled through the crowd behind her. Folders lifted, flash drives glinted in the floodlights, phones recording. Coleman's eyes flicked to me. "This you're doing?" I shook my head slowly. "No, Marcus's." My phone buzzed again. "They've been waiting. You're not alone." The crowd moved closer, quiet but determined. Elena's camera swung toward them, capturing every face. Tom whispered, "It's like they came out of the shadows." Coleman lowered her weapon a fraction, signaling her agents to stand by. "If this is real, this is a gold mine. Names, testimony, every brick of the wall Richard built." A man in the crowd called out, "We've been threatened for years. We couldn't speak. He controlled the courts, the police. But if she's standing up," he pointed at me, "then so are we." The words hit me harder than any gunshot. For so long, I'd felt like a single target, a lone voice. Now, under the courthouse lights, there were dozens, maybe hundreds stepping forward. Coleman's radio crackled with a command from somewhere higher up, but she ignored it. She took a step forward, voice loud but steady. "All right, everyone stay calm. You're safe here. We're going to process every statement, every piece of evidence, one at a time." She turned to me. "Ms. Vale, you just turned a 30-year investigation into a revolution." Elena squeezed my arm, whispering, "This is it. This is how it ends." But I wasn't so sure, because even as the witnesses moved closer, even as agents began guiding them inside, my phone buzzed again. A single line. "He's already moving the money. Follow the deeds. Box 1847 isn't just property, it's the key." I looked at the courthouse steps, at the crowd, at the white vans that had brought them. Hope and danger swirled together like two currents in the same river. I whispered to myself, "This isn't the end. This is the opening move." And for the first time, I didn't feel afraid of Richard Whitmore. I felt ready. Inside the courthouse, chaos turned to a strange, ordered current. FBI techs commandeered conference rooms, spreading out ledgers, tapes, flash drives handed over by trembling witnesses. Agents with clipboards began taking statements one by one. It felt like a war room and a confession booth all at once. Elena's camera caught everything. Even Tom, usually a wall of gruff cynicism, stood by the door scanning for threats, jaw clenched, but eyes brighter than before. Agent Coleman led me into a quieter side room, away from the crush. She shut the door and leaned against it. For the first time since she'd introduced herself, she let out a long breath. "You understand what you just did out there?" she asked. I set the phone and Marcus's notebook on the table between us. "They did it. I just gave them somewhere to stand." Coleman's gaze flicked to the notebook. "And you're not telling me everything. These messages. Someone's guiding you." I hesitated. "He says he's Marcus." She studied my face. "And you believe him?" "I don't know what I believe," I said softly. "I buried my husband. Or at least I buried someone the coroner swore was him. But these texts, only Marcus would know some of it. And if it's not him, then it's someone who's been inside our lives from the start." Coleman drummed her fingers once on the table. "We can trace the number. But if it's routed through multiple proxies, it'll take time. And if it's Marcus," she let the thought hang. "Either way, they're steering you somewhere." "Box 1847? I nodded. "Deeds, property, the core of everything Richard built." Her eyes sharpened. "If you can prove the syndicate's assets sit on stolen land and the title flows through you." "I can take it all back," I finished. Coleman's voice dropped, almost a warning. "That would make you the most powerful and most hunted person in this city." I met her gaze. "I already am." The door opened suddenly. Elena poked her head in, face pale but urgent. "Leora, you need to see this." We followed her out to the main hall. On one of the big monitors FBI techs had set up, a live financial feed scrolled. Bank accounts, shell corporations, offshore transfers. The numbers were staggering, vanishing in real time. Tom stood with his arms crossed. "They're moving the money." Coleman cursed under her breath. We froze everything tied to the ledgers, but if they're shifting assets through the deeds... It's Box 1847, I said. It's a failsafe. Another text flashed on my phone. You're close, but you have to claim it before he does. Midnight. Dock 14. Elena grabbed my arm. Leora, no, that's obviously a trap. Tom shook his head. It's also the only lead we've got. If this guy is right, Dock 14 is where they're moving whatever's left. Coleman looked at me, jaw tight. You step off federal property now, you're on your own. We can't protect you in time if it's a setup. I stared at the screen, at the accounts bleeding out, at the ledger on the table. Marcus's voice echoed in my head. Use it. I'm going, I said quietly, with or without backup. Elena's hand slid into mine again, steady as steel. Then you're not going alone. Tom just sighed, like a man accepting the inevitable, and reached for his jacket. Coleman muttered a curse and barked to her agents. Get me a TAC team and unmarked vehicles. We're moving on Dock 14 in 30 minutes. For the first time since the dessert table, since the shack, since Marcus's death, I felt something different in my chest. Not fear, not grief, but momentum. If this was a trap, I would spring it on my terms. If Marcus was alive, I would find him. If Richard was waiting, I would end it.